Hello and welcome to Fusion Reaction for Sunday, February 16th, 2020. I'm Eugene. Going to be a quicker one this week. Fingers crossed. That was the idea last week, but it didn't work out that way. One thing, get out of the way. You may have noticed this is moved to a different time. I could either be jerking it around just because I don't want you to find it, or it could be because I'm trying to figure out what works best. Let's go with the latter and just take positive vibes all around. So, first thing out of the chute, news. Last week, I had some news items to read to you. Well, not to read to you, to talk to you about. And I got stuck on the whole Bob Conrad death thing and never really got beyond that. So, got a couple of catch-up items from last week and tell you where we are with the podcast this week. So, we'll start out with that. The first was, the Blu-ray, which is the blue way to go. Blu-ray for the faceless ones, the classic Patrick Troughton Doctor Who episode, which is being reanimated, will be out in the UK in March on DVD and Blu-ray, which I am looking forward to. Unfortunately, in the United States, even though I've got it on pre-order, there is no release date. And if it's like the last one, it'll probably be October, which does show a remarkable failure in the marketing department to understand what happens to videos that aren't released in all markets simultaneously. But the good news is that shortly after the March release, we will be doing one of our Doctor Who animated podcast episodes where we will be looking at the faceless ones, which is which features Ben, Polly, and Jamie, and it is the final episode for Ben and Polly, and it takes place at I believe it takes place at Heathrow. So I mean, the Doctor at least was able to get there once before he had to land there with Tegan. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Less so this week's episode of the podcast, which will be coming out. It's going to air live in just a little while. Not the podcast. The episode of Doctor Who is airing live in the UK in a couple of hours. The Haunting of the Villa Diodati. Or Diodati. I don't know. Well, guess we'll find out. I got to say, we're almost done. We're almost done with Doctor Who this year. And I'm tired of it. Chris Chibnall has done what John Nathan Turner could not to me. He has worn me down on Doctor Who to the point where I will be happy when the season is over and get back to something else. It just is, it's relentless in its monotonous hammering of social justice issues, which I'm 100% on board with every last one of them that they're with. I just am tired of having them beat into my brain at the expense of telling good stories. And I think that the people who make the argument that says, well, Doctor Who's always been about that, or it's always been educational, should remember that when the show started out, it was educational, and they got away from that because it wasn't working that well. And when it is telling a message, it does it better when it's layered into an interesting story. Opinion, but anyway, it has worn me down. I am so pleased that there are basically only 2 stories left. 2 stories, 3 episodes. Speaking of those 2 stories and 3 episodes, we will be releasing this week the Villa Diodati episode, and then next week we will be taking a week off from Doctor Who because it is being billed as a 2-parter despite having different names. So we will review it as a whole in 2 weeks. Next week we will be releasing an old episode of Fusion Patrol into the general feed called The Year of the Sex Olympics. Now, for those of you who don't know it, this is a 1960s BBC production. It was written by the legendary Nigel Neal. It is a powerful and unbelievably prescient work of, let's call it satire, but it is science fiction that's doing its moralizing in an entertaining way. And we released this as a Patreon only podcast back in April of 2019, and the moratorium is out on it now, so we are releasing it to the general public in this missing week to show you what the BBC can do. So you can get copies of it. I suggest that if you have never heard of it, you find it and watch it, because it's amazing, and then join Simon and I for the discussion, because it was a really good discussion as well, because we've got some really great source material. Another thing I'm looking forward to this week is we are going to be releasing for our patrons only one of our sidecars. This is one of the most fun I've ever worked on. It's I don't even know that it's got a title yet, but it is a look back at the music and the score of Doctor Who for the last 50 plus years. And we had a lot of fun with that. And also, let's see, the other thing we've got is this week, I put out, and if you're subscribed to this channel, you should know it already, I put out the first of box set 2 for the Big Finish Prisoners stories. I met a man today, and I just got back from my walk a little while ago, and I've just about finished my second listen to Project 6, the second episode, so I'll be writing that up and trying to get that shot out before the coming weekend. On that one, I'm really interested to know where my review is going to go, because I have some feelings about this particular episode. And that is basically it for us this week on the news. I did want to just drop a couple thoughts here about what I'm watching this week. The other night, backstory, Disney Plus came out a while ago, and I am not remotely interested in Disney Plus, but I get a year of it free through my cell phone plan, and why not take as much money from them, value money from them, that I can. So I've got Disney Plus. I watched The Mandalorian. I will definitely have some talks about that later. Loved it, by the way. And now I'm kind of trying to troll through the back stuff of Disney that I might ever want to watch. And it's a vanishingly small list. But one of the films I wanted to see was The Black Hole, which I saw when it came out in December of 1979. Now, this is like 2 or 3 weeks after the premiere of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was the premiere event of the year for me. That was a big deal. Black Hole came out about the same time, and it was definitely not, on par with my anticipation about Star Trek, but I was definitely very interested. And I watched it once, and I didn't care for it. And I have many times over the years wanted to go, I should watch it again. Maybe it's not what I thought it was, or maybe I was in the glow of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, or who knows. But Disney have been so problematic with their releases, hiding things in the vault, releasing things from the vault. It's never been the right time. It's never been the right place. I've never had a chance to see it. But here, I finally had a chance to sit down last night and watch that film. Actually, night before last. Watch that film and really give it my attention as an adult, not a 13 or 14-year-old kid. 15, all right, I can't do the math. 15-year-old kid. And wow, I can see why that film did not really go anywhere. As I say, it was released a couple weeks after Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It's released in the same year as Moonraker, which came out in the summer of '79. It's clearly inspired by Star Wars. At that period of time, every studio was like, "Oh, Star Wars, big! What science fiction might actually be a good thing? Let's do some films." But it's kind of a beautiful film, but at the same time, the special effects are not really on par with Star Trek, Moonraker, Star Wars. They just aren't as good, which is not a big deal, but it is weird watching the film because the acting, the costumes, the even the haircuts, everything, I feel like I'm watching a 1950s science fiction B-grade film. It just has a very I don't know anything about the scriptwriter, but whoever they got to do the directing and whatnot, when they brought them in, they really gave everything to this a feel like they were trying to recreate a 1950s science fiction film. And not in the way that everyone talks about Star Wars being, oh, it's like a Saturday matinee film. It's not. And if you watch it with that idea in mind and think about stuff like Forbidden Planet or This Island Earth or all of those older black and white science fiction films, and I think you'll see what I mean. One thing that is different that does not fit with those older films is it's got really a weird but lovely score by the great John Barry, who you may know did many of the James Bond films. All of the themes that you think of when you think of the James Bond theme were either written by John Barry or, more importantly, arranged by John Barry. And that's a point of contention of them on the James Bond theme. That was not written by him, but what was written and what he produced as the arrangement are so different that he tried to get copyright on it and failed. But it sounds like John Barry. And these other films like Somewhere in Time and Born Free and quite a few other films, John Barry has been a very prolific and very recognizable. But what I think is really interesting is, apart from the main theme, this film reminds me so very, very much of Moonraker. Of course, it's the same year he wrote the track for Moonraker and Black Hole, and there are so many crossover instrumentations, and that you really, if you can put the main theme for Black Hole out of your mind, the rest of it, you either hear that or it sounds like something from a 1930s swashbuckler film in places. It's a very interesting score. I've since pulled it down into my Apple Music library and listened to it a couple times, and it's by far the best part of the film. And the other thing that, well, two things. One, the less said about the meteor storm at the end of this film, the better, because okay. And also what I remember from the film, and I'm not going to do spoilers because it's not a spoiler thing. This is not a spoiler show. This is not spoiler space. I should have a hashtag, spoiler space, spoiler free space. That's what this is. I don't know. The ending. I remember part of the ending. And I remember at the time at 15 watching this film thinking, that's awfully metaphysical for Disney film, and maybe even awfully religious for a Disney film. Watching it as an adult, it's even worse. But it's very, I think they were trying to riff on Space 1999. If the ending doesn't make sense, the audiences will think it's profound. So anyway, that's what we've got for this week. Almost certainly we'll be back next week, but who knows? Not exactly sure when either. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time on Fusion Reaction.